The numbers on the projection screen blurred the moment my smartwatch lit up. I kept my face neutral. Years of high-stakes negotiations had taught me that much, but my mother's message hit like a physical blow. Stephen thinks this year might be better without you. The conference room full of senior partners waited for my next slide. I clicked forward, explained risk exposure protocols, and approved a $47 million audit without missing a beat. But inside, something had shifted. Something had broken. My sister's husband had just banned me from Thanksgiving. He had no idea what he'd just started. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. And I was about to teach him exactly how sharp that blade could be. If you are angry right now, click the subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you are watching so I can send you a hug. Your support helps us bring more mind-blowing stories, and trust me, you wouldn't want to miss them. My sister agrees. I placed the phone face down on my desk and stared out at the city skyline stretching 14 floors below. When people try to push me out, I don't rage. I don't beg for explanations. I adjust. I recalibrate. I move forward with the precision that's made me who I am. I'm Georgina Miller, 29 years old, Division Head of Risk Management at Miller, Grant & Associates. I'm the youngest executive in the firm's 40-year history. I oversee 3 departments, approve multi-million-dollar audits, and lead a team of analysts who've followed me through 2 competitive job offers because they know what I'm capable of. But my family? They think I work in basic finance. They think I'm doing okay for myself. They have no idea. My mother's text wasn't new. It was just the first time someone had been bold enough to say it out loud. You're too much, Georgina. Too sharp. Too difficult. Too exhausting to accommodate. Sharon had always been the golden child. Effortlessly charming, agreeable, the daughter who made our mother proud just by existing. I was the one who studied too hard, worked too late, asked questions that made people shift uncomfortably in their seats. The one whose accomplishments were met with polite smiles and subject changes. Stephen showed up 2 years ago, a mid-level sales manager with an inflated sense of his own importance. The kind of man who interrupts women mid-sentence and calls it adding value. The kind who brags about promotions that were really lateral moves. The kind who treats every family gathering like a stage where he's the only performer that matters. From day one, he treated me like a problem to be managed. Must be nice having such a flexible schedule, he'd say, knowing I worked 70-hour weeks. Sharon's told me so much about your situation, as if my life required sympathy. And now, apparently, I was too threatening to sit at the same table with him. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was finished. My life was too expansive, too carefully built, too deliberately crafted to waste energy on people who chose not to see me. I stayed late that night, reviewed a confidential merger proposal, approved vendor contracts, sent strategic recommendations to clients in 3 time zones. The work was where I made sense, where my mind could stretch without apology. At 11 p.m., I walked through the empty office, my heels echoing against marble floors. The city glittered beyond the glass walls, a reminder that my world existed entirely outside my family's narrow perceptions. If Stephen didn't want me at Thanksgiving, fine. He just had no idea how big my world actually was, and how small his was about to become. The next morning arrived sharp and relentless. I reached my office at 7:15 a.m., coffee in one hand, phone already buzzing with client requests in the other. My assistant, Jenna, was waiting with a color-coded schedule. 3 client meetings, 2 audit reviews, conference call with London at noon. She rattled off, following me into my office. And the Harrington merger documents need your signature before... She stopped mid-sentence. I glanced up from my desk and followed her stare toward the door. My chest tightened for half a second. Then something dangerously close to a smile pulled at my mouth. Stephen stood in my doorway. Not at some small neighborhood office. Not at a place where he could tower over me with his manufactured confidence. Here, on the 14th floor of Miller, Grant & Associates, in the executive leadership suite, staring at my name engraved on brushed steel, Georgina Miller. Division head, risk management. His face had gone completely white. "Good morning, Stephen," I said, settling into my leather chair. My voice was ice wrapped in silk. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You work here?" The words came out strangled, disbelieving. I leaned back, letting him take in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the custom furniture, the wall of monitors tracking real-time market data, the glass walls revealing my entire team of analysts working under my direction. "I run this division," I said. "Why are you here?" He looked like a man who'd just stepped off a cliff he didn't know existed. His eyes darted around the room, the awards mounted on my wall, the corporate photographs from international conferences, the carefully curated evidence of a career he'd never bothered to ask about. "I came to," Brittany said. "Sharon told me her sister worked in finance, but I thought, you thought I worked in a small office somewhere." I finished for him. "You thought I was insignificant enough to manipulate." His face flushed red. "I came to talk about investment opportunities. We're starting a business, and Sharon said you might know people who could help you?" I cut him off, my tone razor sharp. "You want me to recommend you to investors? After you convinced my mother to uninvite me from Thanksgiving?" His jaw clenched. The panic in his eyes shifted into something uglier, desperation mixed with rage. "You lied to us," he finally burst out, loud enough that heads turned beyond the glass walls. "You made everyone think you were nothing." I didn't move, didn't raise my voice, just held his stare with the same composure I used to negotiate 8-figure deals. "I never lied, Stephen. You never asked. You just assumed." "Sharon said you worked in finance." He jabbed a finger toward me. "Not this." "Finance is finance," I replied calmly. "You assumed I was insignificant because it made you feel bigger." He stared at me, breathing hard as the weight of his mistake crashed down around him. Through the glass walls, junior analysts pretended not to watch. Senior partners paused mid-conversation. My entire floor witnessed Stephen Cho, the man who'd banned me from Thanksgiving, melting down in my office. I rose slowly, deliberately, not in anger, in power. "You told my mother I shouldn't come to Thanksgiving," I said, voice low and steady, "because I challenge you too much. But the truth is, Stephen, I ask questions you can't answer. I see through lies you need people to believe." I walked around my desk, stopping just close enough that he had to look up slightly to meet my eyes. "So no, I won't help you find investors. I don't mix family with business." I paused. "And I don't help people who try to erase me." His mouth worked soundlessly. The confident, controlling man who'd pushed me out of my own family looked like he might actually crumble. "Sharon will hear about this," he finally managed, voice shaking. I smiled. Small, cold, certain. "I'm counting on it." Jenna appeared in the doorway, professional and alert. "Ms. Miller, should I call security?" I didn't break eye contact with Stephen. "That won't be necessary. Mr. Cho was just leaving." He stumbled backward, face burning, and practically fled through my office door. I watched him rush past cubicles, past conference rooms, past the world he'd never imagined I belonged to. When the elevator doors finally closed on his humiliated exit, I turned back to Jenna. Reschedule my 9 a.m. Hold all my calls. I paused. Except from Sharon. She nodded, retreating quietly. I returned to my desk, pulled up the Harrington file, and got back to work. Because whatever storm was coming, I'd face it the same way I faced everything else. On my terms. In my world. With the power I'd earned. The truth is, my family's misunderstanding of who I am didn't start with Stephen. It started years before he ever showed up. The truth is, my family's misunderstanding of who I am didn't start with Stephen. It started years before he ever showed up. Growing up, Sharon was the sun everyone orbited around. Beautiful without trying, agreeable without pretense, the daughter who made every family gathering feel complete just by showing up. She laughed at the right moments, married the right kind of man, lived the kind of life our mother could brag about at church. I was the other one, the studious one, the quiet one, the one who worked too much and smiled too little. While Sharon collected admirers, I collected degrees. While she planned dream weddings, I planned career trajectories. And every single time I came home with an achievement, a scholarship, a promotion, a recognition, my mother would smile politely and say, "That's nice, honey. But when are you going to find someone like Sharon did?" The comparison was constant. The message was clear. Why can't you be more like your sister? So I stopped trying to make them understand. I worked 3 jobs through grad school, 2 research positions and weekend consulting that paid barely enough to cover rent. I built my reputation one brutal project at a time, sleeping 4 hours a night, proving myself in rooms full of men who assumed I was someone's assistant. I never asked my family for help. Never borrowed money, never used connections I didn't earn myself. When I landed my first senior analyst position, my mother said, "That's nice, honey." When I became the youngest division head in company history at 27, she said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to Sharon's new kitchen renovation. I stopped explaining after that. Let them think I worked in basic finance. Let them imagine I had a flexible schedule and a forgettable job. It was easier than watching their eyes glaze over every time I tried to share my world. Then Stephen arrived 2 years ago, and everything got worse. Sharon met him at some corporate networking event. A mid-level sales manager who talked about his big promotion like he'd been named CEO. Within 3 months, they were engaged. Within 6, he'd made himself the center of every family gathering. He treated me like furniture from day one. "Must be nice having such a flexible schedule," he'd say, smirking, while I worked 70-hour weeks. "Sharon tells me you're still figuring things out. Don't worry. It took me a while too." He positioned himself as the authority on everything: investments, real estate, career strategy. He'd interrupt me mid-sentence to correct something I'd said, then launch into some story about a deal he'd closed or a client he'd impressed. None of it was particularly impressive, but he told it like he'd conquered empires. The real problem wasn't his arrogance. It was that I could see straight through it. I asked questions he couldn't answer. I didn't laugh at his inflated stories. I didn't pretend to be impressed by accomplishments that were, at best, average, and he hated me for it. My existence was a threat to the image he was building. So he did what insecure men always do: he tried to make me disappear. That night, after Stephen's humiliating exit from my office, I stayed late reviewing a confidential merger file. The building emptied around me. The city lights flickered to life beyond my windows. My phone sat silent on my desk. No call from Sharon yet. No follow-up from my mother. I thought about Thanksgiving without me, the table set for one less person. Stephen holding court, unchallenged, while my family nodded along to whatever narrative he spun. And I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel sad. I felt relieved. Maybe being unwanted by the wrong people is actually a gift. Maybe being excluded from a table where you're not valued is just freedom wearing a different name. I closed my laptop, gathered my things, and walked toward the elevator with something that felt dangerously close to peace. Stephen had tried to erase me. He'd just never imagined I didn't need them to exist. The next morning, I arrived at my office at 7:15 a.m., the way I always did. Early enough to claim the silence before the chaos, late enough that the overnight security team had already switched shifts. Jenna met me at my door with her tablet already glowing. 3 client meetings, 2 audit reviews, and a conference call with London at noon, she said, her voice crisp and efficient. The Harrington team wants final numbers by 3, and Jenkins from Acquisitions needs your signature on. Coffee first, I interrupted, smiling slightly. Then conquering the world. She laughed and disappeared toward the break room while I settled behind my desk. The city stretched out beyond my windows, bathed in early morning light. I pulled up the major contract I'd been reviewing, a merger worth more than most people would see in 3 lifetimes, and lost myself in the numbers. 20 minutes later, my intercom buzzed. Ms. Miller? Jenna's voice carried a note of confusion I rarely heard from her. There's a Stephen Cho here. He says he's family. He's asking to see someone about investment opportunities. I froze for half a second, my pen hovering over a signature line. Then I smiled. Slow. Knowing. Dangerous. Send him up, I said. I could picture it perfectly. Stephen walking into the building expecting some modest local firm. Maybe a shared office space with outdated furniture and fluorescent lighting. Instead, he'd be escorted through our marble lobby, past the waterfall feature that cost more than his car, through glass conference rooms where million-dollar deals were being negotiated in real time. The elevator would take him to the 14th floor. Executive leadership. The floor where the real power lived. And then he'd see my name. I didn't stand when Jenna opened my door. Didn't rearrange my face into anything resembling warmth or surprise. I just looked at him, this man who'd decided I wasn't worthy of a seat at my own family's table, and watched the color drain from his face. Good morning, Stephen, I said, my voice flat and controlled. He stood frozen in my doorway, staring at the nameplate mounted beside the entrance, Georgina Miller. Division Head, Risk Management. His eyes darted around my office, the panoramic windows, the custom furniture, the wall of monitors, the glass walls revealing my entire team of analysts working under my leadership. I watched his brain try to reconcile what he was seeing with the version of me he'd constructed. You, his voice cracked. You work here? I leaned back in my leather chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough to hurt. I run this division, I said. Why are you here? He tried to recover, straightening his jacket, clearing his throat. I came to network, to discuss some investment opportunities. Sharon mentioned you might know people who could help you, I finished. After you convinced my mother to uninvite me from Thanksgiving. His face flushed red. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. He looked around again, at my team, at my office, at the physical proof of a world he'd never imagined I inhabited. The reality crashed down on him like a wave. I wasn't beneath him. I never was. Does Sharon know you're here? I asked, my voice ice cold. His silence was answer enough. I pressed the intercom button without breaking eye contact. Jenna, please escort Mr. Cho out. Wait, he started. Now, I said. He didn't leave quietly. You lied to us. Stephen's voice rose, echoing off my office walls. You made us think you were nothing. I stayed seated, perfectly calm, while he unraveled in front of me. Through the glass walls I could see heads turning, conversations pausing, my entire floor watching this man self-destruct in real time. I never lied, Stephen, I said evenly. You never asked. Sharon said her sister worked in finance. He jabbed a finger toward me, his face reddening. Not this. Finance is finance, I replied. You just assumed I was insignificant because it made you feel bigger. The truth of it hit him visibly. His mouth opened and closed. Beyond us, executives paused mid-conversation. Junior analysts whispered behind their monitors. Stephen's face burned darker as he realized he was making a scene. Not just any scene, but one in my domain, in front of my people. I didn't come here for this, he muttered, rubbing his forehead. His voice dropped, but desperation sharpened its edges. I came because we need investors. Sharon said her sister might know people. I thought. He stopped himself. You thought I worked at some small firm. I finished for him. Somewhere forgettable. Somewhere you could use me. His jaw clenched. I need capital for a business opportunity. I thought you could put in a good word, that's all. That's all? I stood slowly, deliberately, not in anger, in power. You never planned to respect me, Stephen. You planned to manipulate me, just like you've been manipulating Sharon. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I walked to my window, turning my back to him. The city sprawled below, vast and indifferent. You banned me from Thanksgiving because I bring negativity. But the truth is simpler than that. I ask questions you can't answer. I see through lies you need people to believe. I turned to face him, and something in my expression made him step backward. So no, Stephen. I won't help you. I don't mix family with business. I paused, letting the next words land with precision. And I don't help people who commit fraud. His face went white. What are you? Sharon will hear about this, he said suddenly, voice shaking with false bravado. She'll hear about how you treated me, how you... I smiled. Small, cold, certain. I'm counting on it. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then Jenna appeared with two security guards, their presence professional, but unmistakable. Mr. Cho, she said politely. This way, please. He looked at me one last time, searching for mercy maybe, or some sign that I'd cave. But I'd spent too many years being underestimated to waste sympathy on a man who'd tried to erase me. The security guards escorted him out. Through the glass walls, I watched him shuffle past cubicles, past conference rooms, past the empire he'd never known existed. When the elevator doors finally closed on him, Jenna returned to my office. Are you okay? She asked quietly. I picked up my coffee, took a slow sip, and smiled. Better than okay, I said. Schedule my afternoon meetings, and hold all my calls. I paused, except from Sharon. The afternoon moved like clockwork. Client meetings, audit reviews, the London call that ran 20 minutes over schedule. By 4 p.m., I'd signed off on 3 major contracts and reorganized 2 project timelines. Work was where my mind made sense, where variables could be controlled and outcomes predicted with reasonable accuracy. Then Jenna knocked on my door with a courier envelope. This just arrived, she said, marked confidential. I took it from her, noting the weight, the professional seal, the label, private and confidential, requested by S. Cho. My pulse quickened. Not Stephen's initial. Sharon's. Thank you, Jenna. That's all for today. She nodded and closed the door behind her, leaving me alone with whatever truth my sister had finally decided to uncover. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a background report from Sterling and Associates, a private financial auditing firm I'd referred clients to before. The kind of firm you hired when you needed answers that banks wouldn't give you. A sticky note was attached in Sharon's handwriting. I didn't know who else to trust with this. Please review before I open it. S. My hands trembled as I began reading. Stephen Cho. Financial Background Investigation. The first page laid it out clinically. Multiple credit denials under his own name spanning 2 years. The second page detailed failed business ventures from 2019 to 2022, all undisclosed to Sharon. The third page showed outstanding personal debt totaling $127,000, but it was page 4 that made my blood run cold. Recent activity: 2 loan applications submitted using Sharon's name and social security number. One had been rejected. The other, an $85,000 business loan, was still pending approval. If approved, the entire liability would fall on Sharon. I flipped through the rest of the report with increasing fury. The pattern was undeniable. He'd been lying about his income for 2 years. His big promotion never happened. His investments were gambling losses, carefully hidden behind a facade of financial confidence. He'd married Sharon for her excellent credit score and family stability. She'd been a target from the beginning, and suddenly, everything made perfect sense. This was why he'd wanted me away from Thanksgiving. I would have noticed the inconsistencies. I would have asked about his business ventures, his income sources, his investment strategies. I would have asked the questions that would have exposed him. He needed me silent. He needed me absent. I found a second note tucked at the bottom of the envelope. This one longer. Gina, I've had doubts for months. He's been secretive about money, defensive when I ask questions. Last week, he got angry when I suggested we meet with a financial planner together. If this report says what I think it might, I need your help. I need the truth, even if it destroys me. S. I sat back in my chair, staring at the papers spread across my desk. This wasn't just about a Thanksgiving slight anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or family dynamics. This was about protecting my sister from financial ruin. I made copies of everything, one set for my files, one for Sharon, one for backup. Then I pulled out my phone and texted her. I got it. Don't confront him yet. I'm coming over tomorrow. Her response came immediately. Thank you. I stared at the file one more time, then closed it carefully. Whatever happened next, Sharon would finally see the truth. And Stephen's carefully constructed house of lies was about to collapse completely. I drove to Sharon's house the next evening with the folders secured in my briefcase like evidence at a trial. Because that's what it was. Proof of every lie, every manipulation, every calculated move Stephen had made since the day he'd decided my sister was a useful resource. Sharon's car sat in the driveway. Stephen's didn't. She opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. She'd clearly been crying, probably hadn't slept. He doesn't know I requested this, she whispered, pulling me inside. Please, Gina, tell me I'm wrong. I followed her to the dining room, the same table where Thanksgiving dinner would have been served, where Stephen would have held court while I stayed home, banned and silent. We sat across from each other. I placed the folder between us. You're not wrong, Sharon, I said quietly. You're just seeing clearly for the first time. Her hands shook as she opened it. I watched her read each page, watched the truth settle over her like a weight. The loan submitted in her name, the hidden debt, the failed businesses, the pattern of deception that had started long before their wedding. I defended him, she finally said, her voice breaking. When Mom said you were too harsh, I believed him. When he said you were jealous of our marriage, that you couldn't stand seeing me happy. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I believed him, Gina. I reached across the table and took her hand. You loved him. That's not a crime. He's been pressuring me to co-sign on a business loan, she said suddenly. Said it was for our future. Kept saying we needed to do it before Thanksgiving. Her eyes widened with realization. He wanted the money secured before you could interfere. That's exactly what he wanted, I confirmed. Sharon stared at the documents, her expression shifting from grief to something harder. Anger, betrayal, a kind of clarity that only comes when illusions finally shatter. Then we heard it. Headlights in the driveway, a car door slamming. Stephen walked through the front door and stopped dead when he saw me. His eyes darted between us, landing on the folder spread across the table. His face drained of all color. Sharon, he said carefully. What is she doing here? I stood slowly, placing myself between him and my sister. She invited me, I said. Because unlike you, she values truth. His eyes locked onto the folder. What is that? Sharon's voice cut through the tension, cold and clear in a way I'd never heard from her before. Everything you've been hiding. Stephen lunged forward, reaching for the folder. Sharon pulled it away, clutching it to her chest. You have no right. His voice cracked with panic. That's private. I stepped between them, my body a barrier he couldn't cross. It stopped being private when you committed fraud in her name, I said, ice cold and certain. He switched tactics immediately, turning to Sharon with desperation painted across his face. Sharon, she's turning you against me. This is what she does. She ruins things. I didn't ruin anything, I said. You did that yourself. Sharon stood, the folder still gripped in her hands. She began reading aloud, slowly, deliberately, every page another nail in the coffin of their marriage. Outstanding debt, $127,000. Failed business venture, 2019. Another in 2020. Another in 2021. Her voice grew stronger with each revelation. 2 loan applications submitted using my name and social security number without my knowledge or consent. Sharon, I was going to tell you, Stephen started. When? She demanded. Before or after the loan was approved? Before or after I became legally responsible for your debt? It's not what it looks like. Stop. Her voice cracked like a whip. Just stop lying. I did it for us, he shouted. For our future. You did it for yourself, Sharon said. You banned my sister from Thanksgiving because you knew she'd see through you. She hates me. She's always hated me. I met his eyes, calm and unflinching. I don't hate you, Stephen. I just see you. And that terrifies you. The truth of it hung in the air between us. He looked at Sharon, searching for any sign of weakness, any crack in her resolve he could exploit. But she'd already made her decision. Get out, Sharon said. Her voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Sharon, please. Get out of my house. He stood there, frozen, as if waiting for her to take it back. When she didn't, he turned to me with hatred blazing in his eyes. This is your fault, he spat. I pulled a business card from my pocket and held it out to him. If you try to use her credit again, I said quietly, I'll hand this file directly to the fraud division of every bank you've contacted. I paused, letting the threat settle. And unlike you, I actually have the authority to make it happen. He stared at the card. Georgina Miller. Division Head. Risk Management. Then he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Sharon collapsed into my arms, her body shaking with sobs. I held her while she broke apart, while 2 years of manipulation and lies finally released their grip. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have believed you." I tightened my arms around her. "You believe me now. That's what matters." 3 days before Thanksgiving, Sharon called our mother. I wasn't there for the conversation, but Sharon told me about it later, how she'd taken a breath, steadied her voice, and said, "Stephen won't be coming to Thanksgiving. And if Georgina isn't welcome, neither am I." Our mother had been shocked into silence. "Sharon, what happened?" "The truth happened," Sharon had replied, "and you need to hear it." She'd explained everything, carefully, without revealing the financial details I'd advised her to keep private for legal reasons. Just that Stephen had been dishonest and manipulative, that he'd convinced everyone Georgina was the problem when he was the one hiding secrets, that I should never have been excluded. Our mother had stayed quiet for a long time. "I believed him because I didn't want conflict," she'd finally said. "I took the easy path. I've spent years comparing you girls instead of protecting you both." Her voice had broken. "Georgina deserves an apology. From all of us." Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright. I woke up unsure if I'd even go. The invitation had been extended, but the wound still felt raw. Years of being dismissed don't heal in 3 days. Then my phone lit up with a text from Sharon. "Please come. I need you there." I stood in front of my closet for 15 minutes, trying to decide who to be today. Finally, I chose an outfit that was professional but warm, the armor I wore to board meetings, softened with a cashmere sweater Sharon had given me 2 Christmases ago. The drive to our mother's house felt longer than usual. I rehearsed conversations in my head, planned responses to questions I wasn't sure anyone would ask. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in my car for a full minute, staring at the front door. Then I got out and walked up the path, my heart hammering against my ribs. I raised my hand to knock, but the door opened before I could. My mother stood there, her eyes already filling with tears. The house behind her fell completely silent. I could feel eyes on me, relatives pausing mid-conversation, cousins watching from the living room. "I'm sorry, Georgina," my mother said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Sharon appeared behind her, moving to stand beside Mom. "If anyone shouldn't have been here," Sharon said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "it was him." Something broke open in my chest. Not pain, but release. Like a dam I'd been holding closed for years finally giving way. "Can I come in?" I asked quietly. My mother pulled me into her arms, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I let myself be held. I stepped inside to find the house full. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in months. Everyone knew something had happened. The Whisper Network had clearly been active, but no one knew the full story, and their careful expressions told me they weren't sure how to act. My mother guided me through the house, her hand warm on my arm. But she didn't lead me to my usual spot, the corner seat by the kitchen where I could disappear if needed. Instead, she brought me to the table and placed me right beside Sharon, in a position of honor. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Dinner conversation started tentatively, relatives asking safe questions about work and weather. Then my Aunt Patricia, who'd never been one for subtlety, looked directly at me. "Sharon mentioned you work in finance, Georgina. What exactly do you do?" For the first time in years, I didn't downplay it. "I'm the division head of risk management at Miller Grant & Associates," I said simply. Sharon spoke up immediately. "My sister runs an entire division for one of the top firms in the country." My cousin James, who I remembered as always being glued to business news, nearly choked on his wine. "Wait, you're that Georgina Miller? I saw you quoted in the business section last month about the Morrison merger." "That was me," I confirmed, smiling slightly. The conversation shifted then. Relatives began asking real questions about my work, my career path, my thoughts on the market. My mother watched with something like wonder in her eyes, as if seeing me for the first time. The quiet sister wasn't struggling, she was thriving. The tense one wasn't negative, she was perceptive. They'd been looking at me through Stephen's distorted lens, and now they were finally seeing clearly. My mother stood, glass raised, silencing the table. "I want to say something," she began, her voice trembling. "I spent too many years keeping peace instead of seeking truth. Georgina, you were never too much. You were exactly enough, and I failed to see it." She looked directly at me. "Thank you for protecting your sister. Thank you for being strong when we weren't." Sharon raised her glass next. "To my little sister, who's never been little at all. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. Thank you for not giving up on me." Everyone drank. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. I didn't need a long speech. I just looked around the table at faces I'd known my whole life and said simply, "I'm glad to be home." And this time, I meant it. Later, washing dishes in the kitchen, Sharon stood beside me in comfortable silence. "I filed for divorce yesterday," she said quietly. I paused, hands in soapy water. "How do you feel?" "Free," she said. Then softer. "Terrified, but free." "You'll be okay. I'll make sure of it." She bumped my shoulder with hers. "I know. Because you're my sister. And apparently you're kind of a badass." We laughed. Real, genuine, unburdened laughter that felt like oxygen after years of holding my breath. I drove home that night with the windows down, cold November air rushing through the car. My phone lit up with a work email about a new client, a tech startup looking for risk assessment before their IPO. I smiled, pulled into my driveway, and carried my laptop inside. The world that had dismissed me was smaller than the one I'd built. Stephen's illusions had crumbled the moment they met the truth. And my revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the quiet power of a woman who never needed their approval to begin with. I'd won. Not by screaming or demanding recognition, but by existing, fully, unapologetically, powerfully, as exactly who I was. And that was enough.